So it's almost ludicrous for a male minister to get up and talk on Mother's Day about the divine feminine. But until now. I can only talk about it from the receiving end, from the awesome awareness of this power and presence that comes forth as the nurturing nature of life itself through the divine feminine. And perhaps I'll get lucky and I'll be a woman next time around. Before we get going on that, I just want to take a moment. As some of you know, my mom passed about a year and a couple of months ago. Moved on to her next great adventure, and the last time I did this talk last year, I was an absolute wreck because of that feeling of loss and grief and orphanage in my being, you know. And I've come to terms with some of that. And I got up this morning thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about today. Absolutely none. Because there's still that longing to see my mommy again. And to know that that time will have to wait till that timelessness brings us back together at a soul level. And I look forward to that, but not too quickly. But I did want to take a moment, before I get started into the rest of this little talk, would all the mothers in the room please stand up? I just want to acknowledge all of you for the divine blessings that you are, for putting up with those children like me, for all of the guidance, the love, the patience, and the intolerance when required that comes with motherhood. I've watched this from the outside through my family and through the relationships I've had, and you guys are just wonderful. Namaste. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all you do. So that reading was like so on target. My son is 18. And he uses my bathroom in the morning before I do. And so I so relate to cold water on the floor. I don't know what it is about teenage boys and large wet feet. It's like, I just don't understand it. He can track more water through the bathroom than he probably used to shower with. But it reminds me in the morning, you know, of the relationship, of family, of the love that is shared, of the things we put up with when we decide to be in relationship with other people. Because I could go live in a cave if I wanted to, and believe me, some days that seems like a really good option. But that will deepen my awareness of myself, but as Oriah was talking about, not my awareness of life. Because life is a package deal. We come here to experience this wholeness of life with the challenges, with the enlightened moments, with the joys and the sorrows. This is what we're talking about with it when I say it's a package deal. We cannot have joy without having experienced sorrow. We can have bliss because that's a natural state of unification with the one, right? But when we get to that state of bliss, we're leaving joy behind. Because joy is part of the duality of this condition, not the reality behind it, but the condition that we live in. So we experience a joy after we experience sorrow. And the contrast is what allows us to recognize the change in emotion, right? Because had we never experienced those challenges, we never would have overcome them. We never would have dug deeper into what is life's meaning now to find that love and that peace and that harmony that allow us to experience joy in the recognition of our unity with Spirit. So, I was thinking about this divine nurturance. There is a power and a presence that is absolutely everything. It is all of the power, all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge that ever was or will be or is right now is available in the infinite mind of spirit. Because it doesn't deal with time and space. It's beyond and encompasses time and space. And so within all that, all ideas have been had. See, spirit's not going anywhere. It's all of it now, the infinite. Think of as big as you can think of your idea of universe. Right? Whatever it is right now, think of that hugeness that you can think of. Maybe it's Hubble telescope shots of out in the billions of years, or maybe it's just that idea of all of the billions of people living on this planet. Whatever your big idea of the universe is, think of that and then multiply it by 100. And then multiply it by 100. And you are not there yet. Right? That's infinity. We can't really understand it, but we can talk about it as this idea of the unity of all life. Because somewhere when we say there is only one, it keys something within us that says, I'm part of that one. I'm not all of it. I'm an individual aspect of it. That the consciousness within me is the consciousness within the divine, expressing itself in a unique and wonderful way. And so we are all connected with this oneness that we live, move, and have our being in. Right? And the basis of that is love. The givingness of life itself to life itself. As life itself. That's love. You can see where motherhood comes into this, right? So here we have the givingness of life expressing in a unique and individual way as the coming into the world of a baby. Completely helpless in its infant form, requiring some form of care and nurture to grow into the consciousness that we are sitting here in this room. Some of us at slightly younger ages. And as we are guided through life, through those experiences, and we all have different experiences of our relationship with mother. I'm not going to say it's all peachy, because sometimes there are challenges. Especially when we get into those teenage years and we start pushing back against parental guidance because we must do what is right for us now. Right? You ever have your mom say, I don't think that's a good idea. You might want to consider this. No, I know what I'm doing. I got this one. A month or two later, you're like, you were right. I shouldn't have done that. Well, we needed to do what we needed to do to learn that experience was talking to us, that life was guiding us through the form of our mother or father. But we're sticking with moms today. So I had a lovely relationship with my mother. I was the only son. That kind of gives you a certain space in the world where unless you really mess up, you can't do anything wrong. And so I enjoyed that relationship many, 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 many years. Where and it evolved as I grew older and became an adult. And went off and did my thing, the prodigal son thing, for a while. And then I came back, specifically to be around my parents as they grew older, so that I would be able to be there when they needed somebody. Not having a clue what that meant, but finding out. And as I remember going through this process of having been guided back to it, then I would start going back to seek wisdom from my mother. And a really strange thing happened in our relationship. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I'm just going to share it. The thing that happened was she started seeking wisdom from me in my life. And then she would sort through that and say, yeah, well, that's BS, so you need to take that part out. But you got a good one here. And that was that continual nurturing of the mother spirit to guide me into a greater experience of life. Now, what I learned through the process was that I always have that guidance inside me. Anybody ever have the experience when you're getting ready to do something foolish and your mom's voice pops up and says, I wouldn't do that? And it just happens to take your mom's voice. Sometimes it's your dad, sometimes it's the committee, that's telling you that you may want to rethink this approach to whatever it is you're about to say, because it's got some consequences you may not like, right? Or it'll feel good for 3 minutes and then it's going to be pretty bad after that. Those are the kinds of thoughts that go through my head. Mom sits back there and says, you may want to think about this. Right? And so I've noticed that what that is that's the divine consciousness putting a face on itself to talk to me in a language I can understand about maybe I ought to rethink what I think I should do and look at other opportunities. That still silent nag. The nagging voice in my head. My mom was not much of a nagger. She was perfectly willing to let me fall down and help me up and patch me up, but she was willing to let me climb big trees. Remember one time I was 4 years old. I climbed up the backstop of a baseball field. She just looked up and said, you got up there, you get down. I'm sitting there, it's easy going up. Yeah. It's really easy going up. Looking down, I'm going, but how? You figure it out. Okay, I got down, obviously, but that was the kind of wisdom my mom had. She was willing to let me go off and do that kind of stuff, she stood there the whole time waiting to see if I was going to fall, just in case. It's not like she just wandered away and was not caring about the incident. She was just, pushing me to have the confidence in myself that since I got up there, I could get down. And that was the kind of guidance I got from her, and that happens in my life now when I stop and listen to that still small voice within. It's the same kind of guidance, like, well, you got here, you can get down too, And I keep moving on with that. And what I was thinking about is the divine nurturance of life is always available to us. Always available to us. Most of the time, we are not listening. Most of the time, we get an idea in our head. It's kind of like a horse getting the bit in its teeth. It is going to run where it wants to go. That's me I'm talking about, really. I'm going where I want to go to do what I want to do because I think that's right. And damn the consequences. Because I'm right. And all that time in the back of my head, I'll sit down and meditate. And my meditation will be disturbed by loud voices saying, maybe you ought to rethink that. And I'm like, be quiet, mind, I'm meditating. Ever do that one? Right. Be quiet, thoughts. I'm supposed to have no thoughts now, right? When they're shouting at you. You need to apologize. Right? You need to make good whatever the situation was that self-will drove you into this, and you thought, you know what, this is a good idea for me, and then you find yourself going, oh, that wasn't such a good idea. And what am I going to do with that? So there is this divine guidance that's always available to us, always ready, willing, and able to give us the right answers. And we are, and I say this collectively because I truly believe we all choose not to listen to that on occasion. Some of us choose less frequently than others, and you can see how joyful their life is. It really is. It's like, okay, well, let me listen to that divine guidance. And I'll go in that direction. They're like, wow, this is wonderful. Look at these things. They're raising their hand saying, I got a prayer work story. Right? And when we don't listen, we're sitting there going, I wish I had a prayer work story because I'm going to need one soon. Right? To get through this. I have found that in my life, when I turn from spirit, with self-will, with all of the activity I think I know, then I close my door to the infinite intelligence, that wisdom that is love itself, to express through me to generate more love in the world. Right? Because it's not going to be a loving world if I'm sitting here and being a jerk. Right? It's not going to happen for me or the people I come in contact with if I'm aggressively hating in whatever variation you want to call it. I'm irritated with somebody. Well, that's just your positional hate coming out in a very mild form. That's not love expressing. That's part of the package deal, I guess. That we have to work through that to get to an expression of love and harmony and peace and joy. Sometimes that's the universe guiding us by showing us the error of our ways, I guess. But when I open myself to love and harmony and peace and joy, I get more love and harmony and peace and joy. It's that simple, And when I look at the nurturing nature of the universe, when I am open to love, harmony, peace, and joy, the world looks like a loving, harmonious, peaceful, and joyful place. And I get to experience more love, harmony, peace, and joy. I walk around and I look for love, harmony, peace, and joy. And then I find myself in situations where I become love, harmony, peace, and joy, and allow that to spread to the next person I come in contact with. So perhaps I run into a challenging situation, and instead of reacting by taking a side and, charge to battle, I become love, harmony, peace, and joy. Personally, I think that's the divine feminine. Because my divine masculine wants to pick up Mars's, sword, go running off to this to do battle, And so when I can put that down and allow that divine feminine to flow through me as, we're all one. I may not like what you're saying, but I don't have to hate for what you're saying. I don't have to experience that. I don't have to extend that into the world. I can be that loving source even in opposition to what my mind is screaming. Because sometimes my mind does scream, yeah, you just need to get into this. I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll wrap up. The quick example is on Friday afternoon, before being offered a golf tournament on Monday. Friday afternoon, I got an email from the president of our company that just irritated me to no end. Because I had all sorts of justifications of why that particular statement was going to irritate me. And so I wrote a nice email back. Email is a dangerous thing, because I read it again and I said, wow, that doesn't have the right tone to it, because email is read in the tone of the head of the one receiving the email, not the person who sent it. So you may think you're giving a loving suggestion, but if you read it back with a different perspective on it, all of a sudden you think, wow, that would be cause for termination. Maybe I better not send this email. So my little loving mom voice came back and said, maybe you ought to think about that before you hit send. And this time I listened. That and many experiences with sending emails that I hadn't sent. And so I just put it aside. I said, I'll save this and I'll read it again on Tuesday, and if it still requires sending, then I'll send it. It didn't even require till Tuesday, because I put that away on Friday morning, and by the end of the day, it's like, hey, why don't you take the day off and go play golf at this really fancy golf club? See? Mom knows best. So I remember those things as I go through, more and more I remember those things. And I remember those things about my mother, and then I extend them to my loving spouse, because we have 3 children. And when I look at what goes on in our lives with those 3 children, sometimes, the male ego can be a little inconsiderate about that, I guess is the word I was looking for. Occasionally it doesn't fully appreciate the nature of mom, and all of the work that goes into that, and all of the beingness that goes into that. And so when Mother's Day rolls around, and my spouse is working today, as am I, but I look at it and say, well, I wanted to go out to dinner, so I got to work tonight. She said, we've been married 30 years. Don't worry about it. You can give me dinner another day, which is a wonderful mom thing to say, I made her coffee this morning. Hoping that gets me off the hook. No, seriously. I mean, I invite you as you go about every day, not just Mother's Day, but every day, appreciate that divine feminine as it shows up in your life. Whether it's showing up as a mother or being a mother, or whether it's showing up as your dear friend, remembering that love and nurturing is what everybody needs, and support and delight is something that we all desire to experience, especially when we're not feeling it. then that's that divine feminine flowing more through the world. And as we allow it to flow through us more, we get to experience this more. And this is how we get to that utopia. This is how we get to a world of love, peace, harmony, joy, and prosperity. One person at a time, we choose to be that love in the world, and we allow that to express through us. And it may not, one last piece of advice, I'm only responsible for my expression of love in the world. I am not responsible for the entire world other than my expression in the world. Right? And that which I encounter. Because we can have a tendency to take on all of the world's problems without knowing all of the world's wonderfulness. Because we get more of the world's problems told to us than we get of its wonderfulness. So when we allow the divine feminine to flow through us, we see more of the wonderfulness on a personal level. And somehow, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, it doesn't jive with what everybody's saying. When I look at my life, and the love and the peace and the harmony and the joy and the prosperity that are flowing through my life, it doesn't jive with the picture somebody else is trying to paint. That's not my world. You know? And so when I know this, I can be that divine feminine in the world more, and be love in the world more, and be all of those good things and help to move that along. I can do it. You can do it. We can do this together. And so we change the world. Namaste.